Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. My name is Roy Alon. I'm a VP product at Symmetrics. Today, hosting with me the webinar is Shai. Shai is one of our co-founders and the CTO of Symmetrics. Shai,
Hey everyone, great to have you
great,
here.
just amazing. Today we have a really interesting webinar. Although I'm sure everyone giving webinar are starting with this webinar is going to be interesting. But we've been working with many of our customers, different sizes and different industries. We saw something, or we started to hear something that kind of repeats itself, and kind of as a product manager, it's something that catch your ears when you find something that is kind of repetitive among different customers with different sizes and industries. And this thing that we started to hear more often than in the past is around risk committee. How do we improve our risk committee? How do we prepare better for the next committee? How do we make it more effective, more actionable? How do we make it more? How do we make the process of preparing more automatic? Because sometimes it can be pretty a burden to prepare for these meetings, and mainly we see more and more customers kind of realize that these risk committees are very important. This starts from the CISO, from board members, all the way, and the implementation and the effect will go all the way to the within inside the security teams, all the way to the operational, because everything needs to be connected, and this is one of the main topics that we wanted to kind of discuss today. So um, in this webinar, we wanted to kind of start with kind of why we think risk committees are more in the spotlight in the past. There are good reasons for that. We also want to cover some of the challenges that we see our customers and partners kind of face when they want to improve the effect or the impact of the risk committee. And then we want to suggest a few kind of takeaways or kind of pro tips that, based on our experience and what we see from our customers, what they did or what they can do to dramatically improve the impact of the risk committee. And obviously, we all know, and you all know here, the risk committee is not like a one-time thing. It's something that is like ongoing, and it's a live process. So every improvement that we will make, it's like a circle, right? So it will improve the next step, and we can repeat and improve, and it we really see really good results with our customers. Um, with that, then we can start. One of the kind of first items we wanted to cover, and Shai can kind of start with that, with explaining a bit why we see risk committees are more in the spotlight in the past. So let's start with that.
Sure. Roy, can you bring up all the three? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So actually, yeah, we hear a lot about risk committees from our dear customers, from prospects, from the ecosystem. We see that it is getting really in the spotlight, and there are good reasons for that. I will actually start with the third box here, Roy. The new regulations. So we see in the past few years new regulations popping up. Companies must disclose like cybersecurity incidents within 4 business days. That makes business and executives and business leaders they put the focus on cybersecurity risk. They understand that cybersecurity is in focus in general, and governments will continue to put more regulations on that, right? Because we see what's going on in the world. We see the wars out there, and it's not stopping with tanks. It's going to the cybersecurity area, and it's gonna be much bigger problem for organizations. And and the risk committee, this is the place where executives are coming and hearing about the cybersecurity risk, where they can put uh, their 2 cents into that and making sure that the cybersecurity risk is that matters to them is being addressed. Um, the second thing here is talking about maximizing the investment, right? So, ton of money is being invested in cybersecurity, a lot of attention. They want to make sure all of that is to reduce the risk that matters to the business. They want to make sure and discuss the risks that matter the most and understand. if the priorities are aligned with that, if the investment is and the ROI is high enough, and they expect that. They want to be involved, they want to get more information. And the risk committee, this is the place. This is the place to discuss and make sure the investment is going to the right places. And the last part here is the dynamic threat landscape. We know threats are popping up like every day now. AI is enabling adversaries and helping them to take like one attack vector and use it in so many different ways. And you need to react. You need to make sure that there isn't a threat that is becoming a risk without you addressing it, discussing it, and notifying it that. And another trend that we see with risk committees is in the past it was like less frequent, and today they understand that a lot of companies understand that it needs to be done very frequently because of the dynamic threat landscape, because they want to be on top of things, on top of the different cybersecurity risks. And I think this is like the main reasons, but not. But there are many more that we can discuss. But those that I picked here, I think, are the main. And this is why this meeting is so important, and is getting the attention of decision makers. And yeah, you know, it's expensive meeting with all those people in that, but it's worth it. And yeah.
Kind of share what we see kind of as the process for risk committees. Actually, when I created this visual, it reminded me of my experience in the past week when my 1-year daughter got sick with the flu. Then, you know, medicine, fever, trying to recover. Then my wife, same thing, got into this loop. And then when she got out, my older 4 years old boy also got in the loop. I hope we are out of it, but we'll see. I'm the last one standing, so we'll see. But going back to the process, what we see is this ongoing, probably endless process of the risk committee is part of that. Usually, it involves the risk assessment and depends on also the cadence of this assessment, leveraging different compliance standards, security policies, other regulations that need to be taken care of based on the depends on the industry and on the business. Then kind of taking everything into a risk committee, trying to understand what is the risk, to prioritize it, what are the implications, owners, what are the next steps. We'll touch more on that from a risk committee perspective. One of the main things that we see as an outcome, one of the important things that we see from these meetings as outcome is prioritization, because then improving the prioritization can really help with, you know, setting the expectations for the next meeting. What do we expect to be in the next meeting? Which areas we expect to improve? Which areas maybe we accept the risk, so because they are less prioritized. So it's very important to be aligned, and it's not easy because these committees can involve different you know, stakeholders from various kind of you know, places in the organization. Then there is the section of communication. We need to communicate this everything that we learned, prioritized, decided. We need to communicate that with people first within the committee, so everyone will understand, but also outside of that. Other people within the organization, they need to know the decision, need to know our focus, they need to know what our prioritization. That's also we see not a very easy. You know, on the visual it looks, you know, like nice and fluent, but in real life, it's not always like that. But that's the ideal kind of process of that. We wanted to, you know, dive into some of the main challenges we see our customers kind of sharing with us when preparing for risk committees, and when, you know, and kind of making the risk committees more impactful, or just challenges they face during this meeting. First challenge is around focus. Um, we see that obviously these committees involve different people within the organization, and each kind of persona, usually on the day to day, they might or probably not might, more powerful than that, but they probably focus on different risks and different priorities within their day to day job. Actually, if I probably ask 4 people out of the committee what is a risk for them, I will get 10 different answers, because risk can be a vague kind of a concept. Um, So one thing that is important is to define what is the risk. Does everyone understand what is the risk for this organization? How do we envision risk? So this is one thing that we see as a big challenge, kind of lack of focus. The second is that since this organization kind of working in silos, sometimes even if they have kind of similar focus, the data is very segregated and fragmented. So it's very hard to understand how everything are looking like on the same kind of making sure everything is on the same page, or we're looking on the same data, on the same kind of tools and data points. Also, kind of a big challenge that we see, and also together with that, it's kind of all these three are related. Another challenge is around coordination, making sure that whatever we communicate within the committee or after that, we also want to make sure that other teams after that will understand the implications. And sometimes the language that we use can really be different. Sometimes in this committee, we can take it more on the business-driven language, so we can talk about what are the business objectives or business needs. Maybe they want to visualize, or maybe they want to discuss risk in a certain way from like a business application perspective. But then when we will take it on to the operational team, then it will be a bit different. So we'll need to understand how to do the coordination. We have another two challenges. Chad, you want to cover those? I'll expose them.
Yeah, yeah. Another challenge here that we see, two of them actually. Yeah, thank you, Roy. Because you're high on the second one. So implementation is actually talking about taking the risk committee outcome, as Roy mentioned, the prioritization, basically the plan to reduce the risk, which can be high level in a language that is not eventually the language of the different teams and the engineering team and cybersecurity teams, and take that and make sure everyone is aligned and understand how the high level risk, how the prioritization that was set in the risk committee eventually translates to my day-to-day work, right? How do we make sure that eventually the engineering teams and cybersecurity practitioners are working aligned with the priorities that we set in the risk committee? And it's a challenge because it's not like one place. It's usually like in a spreadsheet and eventually like some Jira tickets, and in other places it's gonna be in spreadsheets, and it's all around. Someone needs to translate that, and it's not always easy. And usually when it goes lost, when it goes lost in translate, uh, you don't meet the goals, you don't really work on the priorities, and you eventually don't reduce the risk that you defined and invested so much time in the risk committee to assess it and prioritize it. And another challenge is between and it relates to the poll we have done just now. Between one risk committee to another, uh, threats can become risks and risk can change, and committee meetings are expensive, so you can't do it every day without a tool or something that allows you to do it, like we will discuss later. But eventually it's really hard, and the landscape is changing, and it's hard to make sure that what I prioritized 2 months ago, if I need to change it because the landscape has changed, how do I do it? I need to wait for the next risk committee. Do we have a process to do changes between risk committees? How do I assess new risks between the risk committees? So all that is a challenge in a world where the landscape is changing all the time.
So Shai will cover some of the existing solutions, and then we want to move to to the takeaways, to our kind of strategies and tips on how to make the meeting more impactful. But usually when we work engaging with customers and prospects, usually the first question that we ask is, what do you do today? How do you solve this today? How do you improve this kind of effectiveness of this meeting today? We hear a lot of questions. We wanted to summarize what we hear and why we think they are still kind of let's say not perfect, or what are the limitations around those. So let's start.
Can you bring everything up again, or
Yeah, I wanted to create like
animations? Yes, I will talk here about not only solutions for the risk committee, but also for the risk assessment itself and the whole process. And I will again start with the third one actually, because that's the go-to, the consultancy firms. We see that a lot. Usually customers comes to us or prospects at that stage, but becoming a customer, they started with something that they got from a consultancy firm. They want to understand how to assess the risk, how to gather all the data, what data we should look at. And those firms, they have a method. They eventually come with and will help you get a report that explains everything. And putting aside the price of that report, it's a point of time. It's usually a report, and everyone is looking for a dashboard. They're not looking for a one-time report. And we have discussed like at least 2 times now the fast changing landscape and how things can be dynamic, and having manual processes to get a report eventually, it's really hard. And there are a lot of companies that work in that way, but eventually it's expensive and it's not continuous. And this is the drawback of the consultancy firm's solution here. Um, Risk registries are basically awesome for what they do. You can use them to follow a framework. You can write down and manually feed it.
Oops.
Go back, right?
Wait 1 second.
You can manually feed it with the answers that you have, with the statements from the different teams. You can spend days or weeks assessing each control, talking with it, every tool owner or security program owner, get the information in there, write it in text, but it's required a lot of manual work. It will guide you, it will help you, but eventually you need to feed it, and whatever you feed in there, this is what you have to discuss in the risk committee. This is your assessment. And the third one is basically the one I really like, the analytics tools. I think companies that decide to invest in a real analytics tool and have the right skills and budget for it, they will get a very good answers. They will get continuous assessment. It will help them a lot. But what we usually see is uh, it usually fails. And the main reason is that in order to build a real cybersecurity analytics tool that can answer your questions about risk and do that accurately, you will need a team that understand not only engineering and how data works and collect the data in a good way, but also people that understand the cybersecurity and how to analyze the data. And eventually, you need a good way to visualize that and maintain the data feeds all the time. And that requires a lot of effort, a lot of different skills, and the maintenance is very hard, and it is expensive as well. And eventually, the reason it fails is only because maintenance, because it's hard and lack of skills. So this is the set of things that we see that companies are going to for risk assessments, for risk committees, and yeah, I think I mentioned the drawbacks of each one of them. And eventually, if you go to the next slide, what we see the most is those great Excels that people work on. Honestly, I'm not saying it. I'm not joking. It's great Excels. Like, they are so complicated. People invested many hours building them. A lot of calculations. Eventually, It's a nightmare to maintain. It's not dynamic, but eventually a lot of companies are ending up with that kind of solution. And and yeah, basically it's still not it. It's not something that solved the challenges, not helping with them in a sustainable way.
Question is, okay, now what? What do we do with all this information? So we try to kind of group together and kind of you know highlight five of the takeaways that we see our customers kind of implemented and things that we also recommend we can improve the risk committee. Actually, when I'm talking about it, it's not just improving the risk committee, it's improving the way we are handling risk and the way eventually that we're reducing the risk in the organization. Risk committee is just one of the ways to visualize and to discuss about it. But the outcome of improving the risk committee is actually reducing the risk in the organization. So it's bigger than just a meeting.
Yeah, it's the
So
whole
let's
process.
start. Yeah, exactly. It's the whole process.
Yeah.
So let's start. The first kind of uh, thing that we saw that we kind of suggest is to have improved focus. It might sound obvious if we have limited focus. Okay, then we need to have improved focus, but it's not that simple. As I mentioned, risk sometimes can mean different things to different people. Usually, operational teams they treat risk as what they see from the tools, like output from their security tools, vulnerability management, identity management. This is what risk is for them. But the business leaders and even within a security organization or outside security organization might treat risk differently. So one thing that is important to understand, or especially GRC teams, they might see risk also as things that can be driven from compliance needs or policies or regulations. So again, different kind of meaning. Um, one of the things that are important are to define what is the risk, to align on that. What we see works really good, kind of simple and makes sense for most of the people we've talked with, is to define risk as the combination between impact, vulnerability, and threat. I guess vulnerabilities are something that I don't need to explain. Probably threats also. Obviously, what are the threats that the organization is exposed to? Threats that is relevant for me can turn into a risk. So this and vulnerability, I think these are more the common kind of things people are kind of experiencing. One of the important part is the impact. The impact can really can dramatically change the way we treat risk because the impact uh, uh, can define what is the priority and what is the risk. The impact can be on the organization, on the business objectives, on the goals, on the environment that is more or less important for us. If we all agree within the committee and between all the relevant stakeholders that this is the impact, this is the vulnerability, and this is the threat, and all of them are equal to a risk, it's much easier than to take actions, prioritize, communicate. It makes it more simple. The hard part is to understand what is the impact. But then for that we can also kind of elaborate. Um, the
And
second thing, yeah,
one
sorry.
point on that is we put aside the probability, right? Because that's like a statistic thing that you need to invest time in as well. But that will help you prioritize. But eventually, if you take all those three together, that will help you define the risk and also the probability better. Because you can talk about each one of those separately in terms of probability. And I think that's a topic for another webinar, but just wanted to put
Mhm.
it out there.
Yeah. All right. The second one is breaking the silos. I think this can be interesting, especially when this is one of the main kind of concern. Uh, the first thing we need to do to break the silo is to unify the data from all the relevant sources. It's intentional that I'm not saying, or we don't say all security sources, because in most cases, just security tools will not be enough. We need also HR, ticketing systems, TeamDBs, asset management, which oftentimes will be under HR, IT, different kind of department. We need the information. We need to make sure that we unify this data for all these sources. We need to make sure we have uh, easy access for the data. This can really improve the different use cases, and this can really improve the kind of to break the silos, because once all of us are looking on the same data, this can change basically anything. Think about the first item that I described, impact, vulnerability, and threat. If I don't see everything in one place from a data perspective, then the answer for this question will be different. One thing will say, this is how I treat risk because this is only what I see. I only see vulnerabilities. Other team will only see, risky users, and another team will only see how people are failing their campaign. So if I'm not seeing everything together, it's hard to really define and understand the risk. The third item is to visualize them. Let's say we have a focus, we align on what is the risk. We found a way to unify the data for all the relevant sources. By the way, one thing that is dramatically important here in the silos is to be able also to correlate data between sources. And this is mainly important for the impact part. If we want to know the impact, we must be able to leverage between, let's say, how we manage our assets or users in our CMDB. Let's say in the CMDB there is a mapping between business applications, or maybe in a risk register we have mapping between a risk to an asset. We need to make sure this kind of drill down to everywhere for the people that are managing the vulnerability, the users. It needs to be correlated. So this is also important for the unification of the data. Let's say we have that, then we need to find a good way to visualize that. Usually it's in a sense of what kind of Stripe presented with the different Excels and many different visualizations. We need to find a way to visualize the risk in an intuitive and effective way. This really needs to, when we start with kind of building it's asymmetric, like metrics and different like boards and stories. Sometimes, or like in most cases, the thing that we say is that you need to start like top to bottom, not from the data and the metrics. You need to start from the story. But on the other hand, you need to have the ability to drill down and have the access to the data. But especially for this meeting, for the risk committee meetings, it's not that effective to come with just number of this and number of that. There's the need to build like a story or a narrative around the numbers. So you need to find a solution that will help you adjust quickly to that. Because one story that we build today might not be relevant like in the next meeting or even like next week. And maybe within the same meeting, we need different stories for different stakeholders. So we need to have something, a solution that can help us adjust quickly and visualize the risk in a different ways. Because the audience can really be diverse.
And Roy, just one more sentence here. I think in the past, like cybersecurity people like me, like everyone, were in kind of the basement, right? But now the cool people are interested now in cybersecurity. And part of the translation of the data and the way to communicate that the cybersecurity risk is through visualization. And I think the most important thing is the diverse audiences and the way that you visualize that. It's really important. The way you tell the story and the way the data help you do that and the tool that you're using help you do that. This is very important. We see that as a huge challenge for GRC teams and CISOs to visualize the way they see the risk, the way they see things to business stakeholders and executives. And I think this is a very important takeaway, that you need to invest time in that, understand how you want to visualize that, and use a tool that can help you. So that was my 2 cents here. I wanted to emphasize that. I will take the next two. I think the next two are talking more about the outcomes of the risk committee here. Once you have the prioritization, once you decided on the risks that are going to be prioritized, it's really important to create a language that is, we use in Symmetrics the word zoom. You need to zoom in and zoom out in terms of risks. You need to talk in risk statements and talk about business risk and business outcomes, and to be able to drill down to the specific vulnerability that needs to be fixed or the assets that are relevant for that. And creating that language, that ability to zoom in and out, That's super important, and that will help you align eventually all the team around the right priorities. Click right. And the last part here is we talked about it a lot about the changing landscape, how fast it changes. If you don't do the assessment continuously, if you don't assess your risk, if you don't get continuously data, uh, insights based on data, assessments based on real-time data that is up to date. If you only rely on Excels that are being up to date, they're being updated once in a month or a quarter, you are missing a lot of decision points where you need to look at data that is up to date continuously and do the process continuously and frequently. That's really, really important.
Yeah. So just to recap, kind of the 5 takeaways that, from our perspective, one was around improving the focus, so making sure we have understanding of what is the risk, kind of combining impact, vulnerability, and threat. Be able to unify the data and make sure we break the silos to access the data, correlate the data between data sources, be able to visualize the risk, craft tailored stories for different audiences in an intuitive and fast way, have actionable insights so we can embed the insights that we get or the outcomes that we get from the meeting all the way to the operational teams, and make sure it continues. Basically, make sure we can repeat and that this process is not like a burden on us, not something that we need to, say, okay, let's do it once a year because it's like super tough. If we'll have all the four, like the first 4 items, it should be something that is easier to do and something that we want to do because we want to evaluate the risk like on a more frequent, cadence than like once a year. So we want to briefly explain about Symmetrix. If you want, feel free to share questions. I already see a few questions in the Q&A section, so we can touch on that. Oops, I didn't want to show that. Wait, we can touch on that on the in a few minutes. But basically, from Symmetric perspective, we are a unified risk management platform. Basically, enables most of the things that we presented today. We can unify the data from different tools, threats, and frameworks, kind of to provide a continuous visibility into the risk, help improve the prioritization and the effectiveness of the risk remediation practices. And we really see many customers leverage Symmetrix as part of the risk committee, even presenting Symmetrix in the risk committee and making sure the process is going through that. All right. So yeah, you want to take the first one?
Yeah, I'm gonna click answer live. I don't know what it's gonna do, but okay.
It means you need to answer live.
So, Trudy Brook asked, how do you manage up in a startup to align risk management with business operations? So, I would try to answer that shortly. I think it is aligned with how any organization needs to manage its risk, right? But for startups, it can be different risk tolerance, different risk priorities, different resources that you have in hand to do the assessment and understand how to prioritize the risk. So we do see that startups usually has a higher risk tolerance, and therefore they will prioritize mostly compliance and their ability to sell to others, right? Because they need to enable the business. But I can tell you about Symmetrix in our for ourselves, for our company, we use Symmetrix. We use our tool. We see continuously the risks and how things change, and we find a way to deliver the business objectives and also reducing the risk continuously. And in the pace of a startup, in the pace of startup, and this is important for startups to have that even more or not less than big organizations or mature organizations. And we can take it offline and continue if you would like, Trudy. I would love to.
Yeah. Okay, I can take the next one. So I see a question around the impact. So basically, I assume that kind of the question is around how we help kind of defining the impact. When I described on the impact, vulnerability, and threat, uh, the impact, I agree, is very important. One of the best way that we help with defining the impact is correlating data between different data sources. Usually, if we just focus on one data source, it will not have all the required information, especially when for visualizing risks in different stories. For example, we have a scenario where we want to visualize the risk in the risk committee for executives from a business application perspective, but the operational teams, they don't know what the business application. Their vulnerability scanners and other tools, they speak with assets and vulnerabilities and CVEs, but the information on the business application is within the TeamDB, right? So it needs to be correlated, and this is something we do automatically. So once we correlate, everything is accessible. It's part of the breaking the silos. There are no more silos. You can get access to any data source that is relevant, and you can leverage that for your own needs and your own visualization. So this is important to understand. Another question I see is on the how it works. Yeah, I briefly showed that. I can skip that to that for a second on the how it works. Basically, the how it works for Symmetric, we digest the data from the tools, analyze them, and then apply, different frameworks, risk, threat, our logic on which defenses should be there to basically provide everything that we can. Then we help prioritize, remediate, and report. The question is more in the report. The report, yes, one option. There is an option to generate reports from Symmetrics, and we can provide examples for that. Basically, summarizes everything that you're doing. We see some customers also take screenshots from Symmetrics and putting them in their presentation if there is their own, visual kind of language. But our preferred way is to use Symmetric reports. And also, we see many customers provide access for specific stakeholders to specific places within Symmetrics so they can track in a continuous way how things are performing. So this is on the report side. One sentence on that. We don't have much time, but we'll be happy to continue the discussion and elaborate more. There are a few options to get us. One, you can just send us an email. You can also apply for a free trial, schedule a demo, or use our test drive. Actually, the environment that I presented in the short video is a test drive, so it's like a sandbox that we can share with you so you can play with that. And yeah, I think with that, this is what I had to say. Shai, wanna add something?
We have all the options to start with Symmetrics: a demo, live demo, a demo environment, 14-day trial. Feel free to reach out. We will be happy to discuss the topic with you. Even if the tool is not relevant, to hear your opinion, to discuss the topic, we were open to that. We will love to get your feedback. And thank you everyone for joining today. That was great.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. We hope this has been informative for you. Thank you. Have a good day or night, depending where you are.
Yeah.